Hello everyone, I apologize for not getting much content out to you guys this month, but October's been a very busy month for me, and by busy I mean I've been watching a lot of horror movies because it's October and it's Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody! And so I've been caught up in, having my fill of horror movies, but I've also been caught up in this nail-biter of a World Series where the Nats, they went up 2-0, and I thought, oh my god, they've got a chance to really take control here. And now they've lost 3 in a row, so they're back in. They're back into a corner, and they're leading now in Game 6 as I'm filming this. We'll see if they're able to finish off when we get to a Game 7. But it's been stressful, and I'm pulling for the Nats to win, even though I'm an O's fan. I'm pulling for the Nats to win because my dad is a huge Nationals fan, and he was a big fan of the Senators when he was a kid. So. I would really, it would be cool for the family and cool for my dad if the Nats won, but they're going to have to win 2 straight games to do that, and they have been trounced the last 3 games, so we'll see if they're able to finish it off. But I do want to get a wrestling-related video out to you guys before the end of the month. My Star Wars review will be up either tomorrow or Thursday on Halloween. We'll see how that goes. But I did want to get one more wrestling-related video up to you guys before the month was up, because there's a lot to talk about. AEW continues to keep on trucking. The show's still really good. I really, and I'm not the first one to say this, but I really loved the segment last week between Cody and Jericho and storming up to the VIP box and bringing out DDP and MJF and Dustin and that whole brawl with the Inner Circle and Jericho whining that he bought a ticket and everything. I thought that whole segment came off great. And I feel like AEW Dynamite needs to have more segments like that. Because up to this point it's been almost all matches. And, that's really like the leading complaint against the show, which again, I find really funny that people are complaining, oh, there needs to be more angles, there needs to be more promos on the show, where, a decade ago, I remember TNA catching a bunch of shit for only having, everybody timing the amount of bell-to-bell time on TNA and then throwing it in their face that there's not enough wrestling on the show. And of course, Vince Russo took that complaint and handled it in the worst way possible, calling them fake fights and fans are losers and this stuff. I'm like, that's not the best way to handle that. But the big boy grown-up response would have been, it's like, well, I need to make the matches matter, so I need to have angles and promos to make the matches matter. It's like, I've got to cultivate reasons for people to care about these matches, and that's the goal here, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do. That would be the mature way to respond to that criticism. But I was one of the ones that was, with TNA, I was one of the ones that was like, look, the problem's not that they don't have enough wrestling. The problem is that the stories they're telling aren't very good. They need to improve the actual storytelling and have better promos, better angles, and things like that. But filling the show with nothing but bell-to-bell wrestling isn't necessarily going to cut it. And I've always said that the key to making a great wrestling show is not having great matches all the time. It's creating the anticipation for great matches. That's what makes it work. That's why Hogan and Andre at WrestleMania 3 still stands today as one of the most legendary matches of all time, despite the fact that neither guy could go to the top rope, or at least neither one did in that match. They created a situation that got the fans invested. Everything building up to it was great, and then you got to the match and it delivered exactly what it promised, and gave the fans something special that has lived on in the annals of wrestling history. But, no, I just find it funny that a decade ago, the prevailing opinion online was, we need more wrestling, more action. And now it's like, for the love of God, can we scale back on the in-ring action? There's too much of it. I've seen that criticism levied at NXT. I've seen it levied at, Raw and SmackDown. Raw especially, there's like 20-minute matches on every episode out of necessity because the shows are too goddamn long. But yeah, more segments, more promos, more angles, I think would be good for AEW Dynamite. And they showed last week that they can do them really, really well. So, have at it. I think the shows are still good. For a show that's only had 4 episodes so far, I think they're doing really well. I think back to and I've actually recently rewatched the early, the first few Nitros. And I think back to the earliest episodes of TNA, the weekly Wednesday night pay-per-views. And I'm thinking, I would say AEW now, as far as quality goes, I think they're a better show than the early Nitros and the early episodes of TNA. So I think they're, as long as they continue to tick upward in quality and they continue to create matches that people want to see, and they respond to criticism well, and are able to kind of make up for things whenever they do mess up, I think they'll be okay. And, I'm looking at the ratings from last week, and it's, you look at where they rank, they're number 4 behind 2 NBA games and American Horror Story. And it's like, all right, that's a good place to be. I'd like to see the audience grow. They were beneath 1 million viewers last week, even though they went up in the demo. I would like to see the number grow and their audience continue to grow. But right now, I think they're in a pretty good place at the moment. We'll see if they're able to maintain that momentum and actually build off of it and go further up. WWE, on the other hand, is not doing so hot. They had a bit of a rough week. SmackDown was put on FS1 thanks to the World Series, and the ratings on that came back, and it was disastrous, to say the least. It actually had a lower viewership than last week's AEW, which is like, oh my god. Again, I know Change the Channel definitely had a hand in that, but it also was like, man, it's not looking too good. This move to Fox for SmackDown thus far had a successful first week, and ever since then it's just kind of trending down and down and down. It's like, that's not good. That's not good. But we'll see how everything turns out with that moving forward. I just think right now SmackDown's not in a very good place, and Raw, the show, yeah. It is what it is. What else can you say about Raw these days? And NXT, I think the shows are good, and they're kind of doing some things right. I'm still having a little trouble adjusting to NXT as a 2-hour format. I liked it better when it was just a simpler 1-hour format with like simple matches, squash matches, angles and promos, and slowly building up to takeover specials. And now they're kind of in the rat race with AEW. They're having these blowout matches every week, and it's just like, all right, eventually you think that's going to catch up to them at some point. AEW's done a slightly better job of not giving away matches with any kind of build behind them. We're heading into full gear. We've still got Cody and Jericho. We've still got Moxley and Omega and Bucks versus Santana and Ortiz, and they haven't really... at the very least, they haven't oversaturated them. Some of them have been paired up in tag matches, which I'm not a huge fan of, but overall, I think AEW's done a slightly better job of saving matches. They could do better, and I'm in favor of squash matches. You could do more squash matches. Santana and Ortiz had a squash match a couple weeks ago, and I was like, yes, do more of that. More of that, please. But NXT, despite the fact that I'm having trouble adjusting to them as a 2-hour format, I think they typically have at least one really good match every week. There's some solid storyline development, and Finn's heel turn last week was really good. It's probably the best thing they've done since the move to USA. So we'll see if that generates any interest and if that's keeps them moving forward. NXT not doing as well in the ratings as AEW. AEW has firm control of the Wednesday Night Wars as far as the ratings go. And I'm hoping that doesn't spell any kind of doom for NXT. Because I was worried when they moved it to Wednesdays, because I was like, oh man, that's going to kill what makes NXT special. But I think they're trying their best, and NXT is still putting on solid shows for sure. It's just, how much further is it going to sink in the ratings, and how much longer is USA going to allow that to stand? I don't know. That's just something we're going to have to wait and see. Or maybe they'll be able to grow their audience from here. Maybe the Finn Balor heel turn will do something. We'll see. We'll definitely see. But what else is going on in the world of wrestling? Oh, I guess I got to talk about some online drama that I haven't mentioned on my channel yet. We've got Seth Rollins making comments that were not well received, where he said, if Omega wants to leave the minor leagues and come up and face me at WrestleMania, we can do that. And I don't know if Seth is getting frustrated because he's basically the Roman Reigns, John Cena type now, where it's like, okay, you're the guy, you're the top guy, it's your show now, and he's not being well received, much like Cena, much like Roman before him. Again, I've said it before, when fans feel like somebody's being rammed down their throats, and when they're booked horribly, like Seth has been, the reaction's not going to be very good. And I think Seth may be cracking under the pressure a little bit and getting frustrated. And maybe taking shots where he shouldn't be taking shots. And the comment made him look bad. And it's like, oh, dude, don't be doing that. Oh, like, don't. And of course, JR's response was like the sickest burn I've seen in a dog's age. Who says JR's lost a step? That dude, maybe one day he'll be as over as his girlfriend. I was like, oh shit. Damn, man. That's like JR just won that. Like Seth has no comeback for that. It's true. It's like, look, Becky's more over than you are. It's just how it is. But so that was kind of a shit show, kind of a fun little dramatic thing that happened online. Another thing that happened was the Jordan Myles situation, formerly ACH of the indie scene and Ring of Honor. He's in NXT now, and they designed a t-shirt for him, which I'm shocked that Jordan Myles was getting a t-shirt. I forgot he was even there. I was like, oh shit, he is with NXT, isn't he? And when I heard when the story first started to break, it was like Jordan Myles responds to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, who the fuck is Jordan Myles? I don't even know who that is. And then it was like, oh, it's ACH. Okay, yeah, I know. I completely forgot he was in NXT. And apparently he had a problem with the shirt that they released for him, where it's a black shirt with his name in a white font over like a red kind of curved shape or whatever. And it kind of looks like a mouth with teeth in it. And Jordan Myles said that it kind of, he didn't say kind of, he said it straight up represented racist stereotyping and imagery. You know, I think back to like old cartoons from like the 30s and the 40s, where it's like, you know, you have an African American who's like really cartoony looking, has like really big cartoony lips, and portrays some negative stereotypes. There was a Bugs Bunny cartoon that is lost now. I don't think the footage is lost, but it's a cartoon you don't see anymore, where he basically goes up against a black Elmer Fudd that goes up again, that like portrays like every bad racist stereotype that was around during the time period. And it's a cartoon that I distinctly remember having on VHS when I was a kid. I don't know how that video got available to me, but maybe in the 80s people just didn't care as much. It's like, ah, sure, put it on a tape, whatever. And now it's considered to be like the lost Bugs Bunny cartoon because you just don't see it anymore. But that's the type of imagery that Jordan Myles is referring to when he says that the shirt represents a racist imagery. And I looked at the shirt and I was like, you know, I can kind of see how he would say it looks like it, but it's not so obvious that there's clear intent on WWE's part to be racist. And I don't think WWE intended to be racist at all. I think it's asinine to suggest that they did. I think that this was an accident that they clearly didn't intend. Personally, I think the shirt looks super bland. It's like, okay. And again, I'm kind of shocked that Jordan Myles is getting a shirt, but I looked at it and, you know, I feel like if you're not looking for it, it probably wouldn't register in anybody's mind. And I think somebody else made the comment that, you know, 90% of, or a good majority of wrestling shirts are printed on black anyway. So I don't think it was intentionally racist. And the point I made on Twitter was like, okay, clearly this was not the intent on WWE's part to do anything like this. And it just kind of happened by mistake and wasn't caught until it was too late. And my initial response was like, see, this is why wrestlers need to be involved in the creative process and marketing themselves and creating their own merch. I think back to cases like Samoa Joe telling Triple H he didn't like his original theme song. It's like, yeah, that original theme song was garbage. And it probably should have been caught before Joe even went out there. But Joe said his piece, I don't like this theme song, it's garbage. And there was no like racial issue with the theme song. It was just a crappy theme song. And they changed it to a song that's still not great, but better than what he originally had. But yeah, if you involve the wrestlers in their own creative process, you can catch those things, and you can, if they have a problem with something, it can be fixed really early on. And my initial assumption was that he didn't see the shirt until after it was released, and then just kind of went like, whoa, what the hell? And now apparently WWE's released a statement saying that apparently Jordan Myles saw the shirt before it was released and approved it. So it's like, okay, now what the fuck is going on? I don't know. And then Jordan Myles went completely insane on Twitter, and he called Jay Lethal and Uncle Tom, and I'm like, oh dear God. Okay, any sympathy that you had, dude, just went flying right out the window because it just feels like you're flying off the handle and acting crazy. And this is a good way to get you, you know, shunned in the wrestling community. It makes you unhireable, because if I'm a wrestling promoter, you know, if I'm working with AEW or Impact or literally any other company, and I'm looking at this situation, I'd be like, that guy's a shit stirrer, and I don't need that shit on my roster. And you know, it's probably, you know, a molehill that got turned into a mountain and turned into a bit of a dramatic situation over the weekend that probably shouldn't have been. It's a shame that it happened, and it was embarrassing for Jordan Miles, and I'm sure it was embarrassing for WWE as well. But again, I don't think WWE intended any racism at all. Clearly, you know, any perceived negative stereotyping that went into the shirt was clearly an accident. I look at that shirt and I don't believe that there was any intentional racism. Why the fuck would anybody in 2019, with the PC Twitter mobs out to lynch you at any fucking drop of a hat, why the fuck would WWE deliberately release a shirt that was intentionally racist? Like, it's just, nobody would do that today, because you know what happens if you do something that's even perceived as racist. The social media PC crazies come after you like rabid wolves, and it's just it's easier to kind of skirt around that and not have to deal with that headache. So no, they didn't intend anything by it. It was just a mistake, and Jordan Miles took it a little too far. Had to throw Jay Lethal under the bus in the process. I'm like, Jay Lethal to me is like, the reason he got the title in ROH and ACH didn't is because Jay Lethal's better than him. That's it. I mean, I'm just saying that as a fan. I'm like, I've always preferred Jay Lethal over you, buddy. So if you're upset that he got the title and you didn't, and you want to call him an Uncle Tom, and it's like, I mean, Jay Lethal was actually legitimately better than you, so I don't know. And I'm not trying to put down ACH. I think he's an exciting athlete, and I think he's a good hand. I don't think, at least at this stage in his career, I haven't seen anything about him that would make him stand out to a point where I would say put the world title on that guy. But he's a solid hand, and I think he's absolutely an asset to the roster as long as he, you know, not causing trouble. And this is like, dude, you don't want to. There's a right way and a wrong way to handle this. And normally, whenever a situation like this breaks out, and you get somebody crying, that's offensive, or pointing out some sort of like social injustice or something involving some piece of media, whether it be a film or a TV show, and it's always an overreaction. It's like, you saw it recently with the Joker. It's like, this movie's going to inspire white neo-Nazi incels, and there were articles written about this, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then I see the movie, and it's like, yeah, they overreacted, as everyone tends to do these days whenever something like this comes up. And it's like, dude, instead of like taking to Twitter and just going completely batshit crazy, he could have like gone up to somebody in the office, hey, I don't really like this shirt because of X, Y, and Z. Can we do something to fix this? And try to resolve it that way. And maybe he did, and maybe he felt like Twitter was his only recourse after being snubbed. I don't know. I don't know the full story. I don't know what happened, but the way it all played out, it made him look really bad, and it put attention on the wrong kind of attention on the WWE that they didn't want. So it was just a really crazy situation all around. That it was something that became a dramatic news story that didn't need to be a dramatic news story at all. And this is something that could have been entirely handled behind the scenes, and the fans wouldn't have even been aware of it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Jordan Miles is a little crazy, needs to calm down a little bit, and WWE. If it's not true that he approved the shirt before it was released, then they need to let their guys have more say in their merch and marketing themselves and things like that. So situations like that can be avoided. But again, according to their statement, that they let him see the shirt before they released it. So who knows? I have no idea. Again, I was just impressed that Jordan Miles even got a shirt at all, because I didn't think he was like that big enough of a deal to get a shirt. But yeah, so that's pretty much the end of that. And what else is going on in wrestling? Oh, I want to talk a little bit about Impact Wrestling. I saw Bound for Glory last week. I thought the show was okay. I didn't love it. I thought overall the show was fine. I thought the tag match was fun, and the RVD heel turn was like a neat little thing. Oh, let's see what happens with this. And the X Division ladder match I thought was the match of the night. Normally those multi-person in this case with Tessa thrown in. Spot festy kind of matches aren't my favorites. They're fine, but they don't really stick with me. But this one was pretty crazy and pretty good. I wish Tessa had won, especially considering how everything looks like it's going to play out based on what I'm reading in the Impact spoilers. I wish they had just let Tessa get the win and then use it as a way to springboard her into a further feud with Sami Callihan. Main event was a fine, like hardcore garbagey type of match. I just wish that Sami Callihan had gone over. And I can say this now because the first real Impact on Access TV has aired, and Sami Callihan is the new Impact World Champion, which they obviously did because it's like, all right, new night, new channel, we want to have a big moment. And I understand that mindset, but to me, it's like, I'd rather reward the people that bought the pay-per-view. It's like, this is why nobody buys the pay-per-views, because all the big stuff happens on TV. And it's like, I would have rather, it's like, reward the people that buy the pay-per-view and do the title change on pay-per-view. But what else happened on the show? Ken Shamrock looked better than I expected. I thought the match with Moose was okay. They kind of flubbed the finish a little bit, but overall, Shamrock looked, again, better than I would have expected. The Gauntlet doesn't really do it for me. It was just kind of like a pinball, or random-ass pinball match where bodies are just flying around. It's like, whatever. That was what it was, but cool to see Eddie Edwards win, I guess. And that's pretty much Bound for Glory. That's most of the card. And I thought it was overall an okay show. Not one of Impact's better pay-per-view efforts recently. Some of their pay-per-views this year have been really good. I thought Slammiversary was very good. And, they've had some pretty solid pay-per-views this year. This was probably their weakest pay-per-view effort of the year, but overall far from a disaster. I thought it was a perfectly okay show. And with the move to Access, I'll say this. The studio show that they did last week to kind of serve as a preview for their debut on Access, I was like, man, that looked really good. Like, the studio setting looked really good. And I haven't watched the first Impact on Access yet, but I hope they incorporate more of those studio segments onto the main show. Because, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I'll talk to him later. I would hope that they would incorporate some of the studio segments because they looked really good. And it's like, maybe that's the change in format that Impact could use, where it's like you have these kind of ESPN Sports Center segments in the middle of the show. It kind of reminds me of like the old WWF shows like Primetime and, Superstars. Where it's like, let's go to the studio, and you'll see Sean Mooney in the production truck or something and making, updates, or Mean Gene giving updates to the upcoming pay-per-view card or something like that. They could... It had kind of like a Talking Smack look to it as well. It looked good. I was impressed with how it looked, and that's not something I've said about Impact in a long time. Where I was like, oh hey, the show actually looks pretty good. So hopefully the change to Access is good for them, and they're able to keep trucking and put together something really solid. Because there's some wrestling shows out there I'm kind of digging lately. Obviously I mentioned AEW. I like AEW Dark too. It's kind of a neat. It's basically their version of Velocity, where you get to see all the dark matches that happened the week before, and sometimes you get a pretty neat gem on there, like Darby Allin versus Shima from the DC show, which I thought was a really good match in person, and then I watched Dark, and it's like, yep, it was a really good match. And I like the undesirable to undeniable segments that they do with some of the behind the scenes. It's perfect as like a bonus material to Dynamite type of show. And for that, it's perfectly enjoyable, and I'm kind of digging it. NWA Power still works for me. It's simple, it's retro, it's fun. It's not going to reinvent the wheel. It's not going to set the world on fire, but it's perfectly enjoyable. It's the apple pie of wrestling shows. It's simple, familiar, and fun, and who doesn't like a slice of apple pie once in a while? I wouldn't put it up against Raw on primetime or anything like that, but it's the perfect type of show. Like if I'm, sitting at home at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, just pop on some NWA Power. I can watch that. It's perfectly enjoyable. It's brisk. It's fun. It's easy. They give the right guys the right amount of mic time. I think Nick Aldis is really good on the stick. Damian Sandow, I forget his new name. Aaron Stevens, I think it is. I think his current gimmick is a lot of fun. Eli Drake is great. He was one of the best things TNA had for a while, and he's really good there as well. And got Anderson there. You've got James Storm there. They've got some really good talkers there, and I think that it helps carry the studio wrestling format a little bit better when you have really good talkers to kind of carry the load. So that's all going really well. I'm enjoying NWA Power. I'm still trying to get into MLW Fusion. I'm still trying to get like a feel for all the guys there. I think the show overall is produced fairly well. I'm just still trying to find an investment in all the guys that are there. Right now, my favorite guys are the Dynasty. I think they're amazing. MJF, obviously, but Holiday and Hammerstone are also very, very good. I'm really digging their whole act. I think they're great, and they're easily the best thing on MLW right now. MJF is so good. He is my favorite part of 2 wrestling shows. That's amazing. But in any case, yeah, I think that's all the wrestling updates I wanted to talk about. Really, it's just been kind of a downer week for WWE, and that's unfortunate. I don't want WWE to fail, but hopefully this will give them a kick in the pants that they need, and they actually go through and do what they need to do to improve the product. And everything else I'm kind of enjoying. The only wrestling show right now that I'm straight up like not watching is ROH, because I think they're terrible. Like, and it makes me sad to say that. I think ROH right now is just the pits. Impact is significantly better. NWA Power significantly better. MLW, if not significantly better, at least it's like a better version of Ring of Honor. What Ring of Honor is currently doing, and AEW is better, NXT is better. There's just much better wrestling out there. Oh, speaking of that, one last thing before I go. I am very excited about the news of New Japan opening up an office here in the U.S. and running shows here in America. I don't know how the New Japan product is going to translate to an American audience. They've typically just been basically guest stars on ROH shows and other American shows and indie shows. And now it's like, oh, they're going to be running their own shows? That's interesting. I mean, great. I thought they came off really, really well in the Garden WrestleMania weekend, but we'll see if they're able to do that holding their own shows by themselves. But overall, and they've run a couple of shows here in America, but nothing, that what they're talking about, it's like, oh, they're going to have like a regular presence here in the States and like touring schedule and everything like that. That's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes. I'm interested in it. I'm very interested in seeing how it goes. And maybe if they can form a partnership with maybe AEW or Impact or somebody, maybe there's money to be made there. Who knows? But it's very exciting and interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that all plays out. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. And make sure you all have a happy Halloween. I'm hoping to God that the Nationals didn't shit the bed while I was filming this. But that's all I have for you now. Thanks again all for watching. You all have a happy Halloween, and I will see you all later.